I welcome you all to the module 8 of this course titled Applied Positive Psychology. So, the module 8 is about kindness and prosocial behavior, and this is the first lecture of this module, and overall it is lecture number 20. So, today's lecture is titled as Kindness, Concept, Theories and Benefits. So, in today's lecture, I will be talking about the concept of kindness and how it relates to positive psychology and different aspects around it, including theories and benefits and so on. So, before we talk about today's lecture, let me give you a brief recap of the last lecture, which was part of the module 7, and in that lecture we talked about the concept of meaning in life, and more specifically the last lecture was addressing the issue of intervention for meaning in life. So, we try to identify various variables associated with meaning in life, and in that context we try to see what are the variables where we can work or facilitate those variables, and ultimately they can lead to higher meaning in life. We also talked about how can we address the issue of meaning in life and enhance meaning in our life through the concept of Viktor Frankl's logotherapy. So, these are basically the major concepts that we discussed in the last lecture. Today's lecture will be focusing on the concept of kindness. What is kindness? What counts as a kindness? We will also talk about evolutionary mechanisms of kindness. We also talk about how kindness is related to happiness. We will also talk about some of the practice aspect of kindness, mostly in the context of random acts of kindness, and we will also address the concept of self kindness or compassion, self compassion. So, let us start today's lecture. Now, when we talk about the concept of kindness, it is in a very general sense, it means any action that is intended to benefit others. So, any action that we do with the intention to benefit someone else. So, that will be broadly called as a kind action, or that action will come under the umbrella term of kindness. Now, this concept of kindness has a very strong moral dimensions. Almost every religion talks about it. It has so many benefits and it is a very desirable moral characteristics. All religion prescribes practice of kindness as a holy virtue and basis for our happiness. Every religion talks about it. All the moral philosophies talk about the benefit of kindness. So, when you talk about kindness in the psychological sense, it has it's a combination of emotional, behavioral and motivational component. So, kindness as a concept has an emotional aspect to it, there is an action aspect to it, and there is a motivational aspect to it. For example, at the emotional level, when we express kindness in the emotional level, it is called as compassion. That emotional feeling of for someone else in terms of benefiting someone else, so that is called as compassion. At the motivational level, it is urge to help others. Whenever there is an urge to help someone else without really concerned about getting something out of it, then that is the motivational aspect of kindness. And behavioral or action level aspect of kindness includes actual helping behavior, when you actually go and do something for other people. So, that is the behavioral aspect to it. So, when you look at it psychologically, it has emotional aspect, it has motivational aspect, it has action aspect. So, in simpler terms or in a very simple term, we can say kindness means treating others with warmth and respect, and there is an intention to benefit someone else. However, when we explore kindness more deeply, we can also look at some other aspects to it in the concept of kindness. So, kindness broadly involves generosity, which basically means generosity in terms of giving your time, resources and skills to help those in need. So, there is an important component of kindness. Kindness always includes sense of generosity in terms of when you are ready to give your time, resources, skills in terms of helping other people. Kindness also includes compassion, which we already talked about, the emotional aspects of kindness, which means being truly present for someone, whether by actively listening to their struggles or offering silent support. This compassion reflects a genuine concern for others' well-being. So, it is an emotional expression of it when someone is genuinely concerned about the welfare of another individual, or that there is a sense of genuine emotional connection with that person to help that person. So, that aspect is called compassion. So, kindness includes compassion, it includes generosity, and kindness also is about nurturing and caring for others. So, that is an action part that we talked about. So, it is finding joy in doing favors, offering supports and performing acts of goodwill and so on. So, those basically we are talking about the different aspects to kindness. So, all these things are included when we talk about kindness, it is a broad umbrella term. Now, we have also discussed something called as the virtues and character strengths in one of the earlier module. In that concept of character strength, one of the character strength we discussed was kindness, which came under the broad virtue of humanity. So, we discussed 24 character strengths, universal character strengths, and out of this 24, one character strength was kindness, which comes under the broader virtue of humanity. So, globally kindness ranks among the top 5 most common character strengths. As we have already discussed that character strength can be measured, and the VIA website actually allows us to measure our character strengths, or signature strength means top 3 to 5 character strengths. So, when thousands of people actually did the assessment for character strengths, kindness actually ranked among the top 5 most common character strength described by people. So, kindness also serves as a buffer against the negative effects of stress, promoting resilience and emotional well-being. So, it has also some impact on how we deal with the challenges and problems of our life. So, it helps us to buffer against. So, whenever there is a challenges and problems and negative aspects in our life, such as stressful situation and so on, many times the expression and the experience of kindness can actually protect people. When we are in conflict and when we are all the time in terms of resistance and so on, which is a kind of reflection of lack of kindness, could lead to more stress and so on. So, feeling of kindness actually could buffer against a lot of negative impact of stress. It can promote resilience, you may be able to better handle the situations and so on. Additionally, practicing kindness towards yourself can also reduce anxiety, self-criticism, perfectionism. So, this is something called as a self-kindness or self-compassion, which we will talk little bit in the end of this lecture. When we are also kind to ourselves, not just about other people, it has also many benefit in terms of it can reduce anxiety, self-criticism. Too much of perfectionism can lead to a lot of stress in one's life, that everything has to be perfect and so on. So, that is a lack of kindness towards yourself, you have too much of expectations and so on. That can also have a positive impact emotionally on oneself when we are also kind towards ourselves. So, these are some of the introductory concepts in terms of understanding what kindness is all about, what are the things associated with kindness. Now, let us look into what counts as kindness, what are the activities that can be called as kind actions and so on. Now, acts of kindness, when we talk about it, need not be some great work of charity, that we only think somebody is kind when that person does some great works of charity and so on. Not necessarily. When we talk about kindness in psychology, we are talking about mostly about your intention, and even small action that we perform which are intended to benefit someone else. All can be called as kind actions, not necessarily up to donate some great amount of money in terms of calling yourself as a kind person and so on. So, even simple acts of smile or saying thank you or a word of encouragement could be called as a kind action when the intention is to benefit someone else. So, that is something very important. So, in the action which can be counted as a kind action, what is important is that it is an act coming from genuine care and concern from another person. So, any action, small or big, when it emerges from the genuine care and concern from another person, that action can be called as a kind action. So, acts of kindness can come from spur of the moment when you notice someone in need, and can be thought and planned in advance also. Many times kind action can emerge just randomly, which are called as random acts of kindness, or many times people plan in advance and everything to just do some actions and with all the plannings and so on. So, those are like planned actions. So, kindness requires us to be aware of the people around us and to notice their needs and feelings. So, generally it comes out of the sensitivity towards the needs of another people. When we are sensitive towards the needs of other people, that sensitivity actually leads to kind actions and so on. So, as per this definition, any action can be called as a kind action if the intention is to benefit someone else. It could be a very small action or it could be a great action, whatever it is. That intention plays very important role. Now, let us look into evolutionary mechanisms of kindness. What does that mean? Is that now kindness is very important in terms of not just psychological benefit or moral benefits, it has also a lot of benefits in terms of survival of the species also. Now, without kindness, collectively as a species we cannot survive. It is because we are kind to each other, at least there is some sort of kindness is still persisting. That is why we as a society are still remaining together. The lack of kindness can express in terms of conflicts, fights and so on. So, the more we see fights and problems, conflicts between groups and peoples around us, that means the lack of kindness is decreasing in that society. So, the expression of kindness is very important in terms of it collects people, it acts as a cohesive force. Without kind action, without kindness in the heart of people, collectively we cannot exist as a species. We will kill each other and everything will destroy each other. So, it has very important evolutionary basis to it. To survive collectively we need kindness. So, kindness is not just about individual thing, it has a collective important aspects to it. So, evolutionary mechanism means evolutionary forces unconsciously also propels us to be kind, but it has its limited way. So, evolutionary forces means biological forces or through the natural selection process, people express kindness in a limited sense so that they can pass on their genes to the next generation, so that they can survive, the species could survive. So, that is called evolutionary mechanism. Let us see how evolutionary forces promotes kindness, although it is a very limited way, but it promotes kindness in so many ways. Let us look into some of these possible evolutionary mechanisms. So, evolutionary mechanisms favors kindness in a varieties of ways. So, let us see. One is kindness to families or kin altruism. Evolutionary mechanism is expressed in a very limited sense, but still the main purpose is to pass on one's genes to the next generation, so that as a species we can survive. So, when we talk about this called kindness to families, we are talking about kin altruism as a term, which basically means natural selection promotes kindness to genetically close relatives such as family members and so on. For example, love and kindness for offspring, siblings, parents and so on. So, we in a limited sense automatically programmed to be kind and help particularly people who are genetically close to us. So, in a sense it is a natural selection process promoting in certain ways of behavior, so that our genes could pass from one generation to the next generation. So, that is called kin altruism. So, we are more programmed towards to be kind and to be helpful towards people who are genetically close to us. That is why we always first will try to help people who are very close to us, maybe family members, offsprings and so on. So, this is one expression to it. Second is something called as mutualism, which means kindness to members of one's community. So, natural selection favors the tendency to be kind, to coordinate and collaborate with others who share common interests such as teammates and group members. So, this kindness also kind of get a little broader expression from immediate family members to community members. We are more likely to help people who are within our community or to be kind, because we find some common interest with that community members and so on. We are more likely to coordinate, collaborate with people who share common interest. It could be somebody, your teammates, group members and so on. So, in that sense you are helping people who are very similar to you, so that your gene could pass from one generation to next generation. So, this tendency led humans to form clubs, gangs, sects and so on, This form of kindness can explain loyalty, solidarity, camaraderie, civic mindedness, community spirit and commitment to a cause greater than oneself and so on. All these are expression of this concept of mutualism and so on. The third evolutionary mechanism that can be seen in terms of kind behavior is called something called as a reciprocal altruism, which means we are kind to those who will meet again and return favor. So, especially we become more kind towards people whom we expect that we are more likely to meet them again and they are more likely to return my favor and so on. So, this natural selection favors kindness to those who might return favor later. So, that is called reciprocal altruism. It can explain kindness in the form of sympathy, trust, returning favors, gratitude, forgiveness and friendship and so on. That is also an expression of evolutionary mechanisms. So, reciprocal altruism predicts that these tendencies will most likely to be shown in interactions where individuals expect to meet again and may include kindness to strangers as it may be way of making new friends. So, this can also explain even why people sometimes help strangers, because that may be way of making new connections and friends and so on. So, this is also another expression of evolutionary mechanisms. The fourth one is called competitive altruism, where kindness to others when it enhances one's status. What does that mean is natural selection favors kindness that impresses peers and attracts mates. People become more kind in situations where there is a chance to impress peers and attract opposite mates and so on, opposite gender and so on. This is called competitive altruism. It is in a sense you are trying to pass on to your genes to the next or more possibility of reproduction and so on in a very unconscious way. So, competitive altruism can explain kindness in the form of generosity, bravery, heroism, chivalry, magnanimity and public service and so on. And these are elicited especially in the presence of rivals and potential mates like opposite sex and so on, as it may enhance one's status and so on. So, these are some of the things which expresses itself in the form of competitive altruism. So, these are some of the possible evolutionary mechanism which promotes kind behavior, altruistic behavior in a very limited sense, so that a species can pass on their genes to the next generation, so that as a species one can survive. Now, these are like possible evolutionary mechanisms. Now, psychologically kindness is one of the reasons why people engage in kindness is that it has many psychological benefits. One is that we experience happiness with the kind actions. So, there is a saying, what goes around comes around. So, with kindness we give happiness to others and it returns to us. So, that is the simple formula of life which works with kindness. What goes around comes around basically means when you become kind to another person, so you are giving happiness to another person and somehow looking at happiness of another people, it comes back to you, you also feel happy. So, that is a very simple thing, what you give it comes back to you, especially in the psychological sense. So, that is why a lot of people even without any apparent benefit or anything getting in return, people engage in the kind actions or actions of charity and helping and so on. One of the main psychological reason apart from all this evolutionary reason is that people get a lot of happiness out of it. So, apart from all the strict evolutionary reasons, one psychological reason why people may engage in kindness is that it gives them a lot of happiness, and that itself is the reward. So, people show kindness as it gives them happiness. This may explain a wide variety of kind behavior of human being, including donations, charity work, even anonymously. Even no one may know that XYZ has given donation and so on. Still that person may engage in such behavior. One of the reasons that it gives them a lot of happiness in terms of that is what the reward they get. So, many research support this proposition that acts of kindness increases happiness and well-being. So, there are a lot of research that shows kindness, acts of kindness actually enhances happiness for a lot of people. For example, one interesting study was conducted on kindness or helping behavior, in which indicated how kindness could be linked to happiness and other positive benefits. So, this study actually followed 5 women with multiple sclerosis over 3 years. So, they were having this, the disorder of multiple sclerosis, more of a neurological disorders where their life was highly limited. It included things like not able to move and other things. So, it was highly limited disorders of neurological disorders. So, the 5 women with this disorder were selected for this study, and these experimenters or researcher followed these people for 3 years. Now, what they did was they were given the task, the researcher gave task to these 5 women who had multiple sclerosis. Their task was to peer support for 67 other such MS patients by training them to be compassionate and active listening. So, the researcher basically asked them, these 5 women with multiple sclerosis, that they need to support 67 other similar patients just like them. How to support them? They basically has to just listen to them compassionately and active listening, that is it. Just read, hear their stories and whatever they want to feedback and so on, because they are having similar problems in life and so on. So, they were supposed to call each patient 15 minutes per month. So, that is the task, 15 minutes per month for each patient. So, they can call 15 minutes at least once in a month for each patient. So, there were 67 such patients. So, that was the task they were given. For 3 years they were supposed to do this, and they were following them, and they were taking feedback and so on. After 3 years the researcher found that these 5 women actually reported they experienced increased satisfaction in life, self-efficacy and feelings of mastery. This whole condition of multiple sclerosis was actually very limiting, and such patients generally experience depression and so on because of limitations of their life and the impact of the disease and so on. But after when they actually supported similar patients, people who are very similar to them, just to listening to their stories and so on, they were just supporting them emotionally, nothing else. So, this kind action actually changed them psychology in so many ways and led to many benefits. One such benefit was they experience more satisfaction in their life. Self-efficacy means they are able to feel that they can control their life and having more confidence in their life and so on. They engaging in more social activities and less depression. The depression symptoms decreased and they engage more in social activities. This activity also shifted their focus away from themselves and problems towards others, means that this whole task of helping someone or listening to the stories of other people, actually it shifted focus from themselves, their problems and their problems of their life because of this disease and so on, and it shifted to someone else's problems. So, that shift actually helped them a lot. They also experienced stronger sense of self-esteem and self-acceptance. They started accepting their situation because they could see that so many other people also experiencing similar problem, and maybe many other experiencing more issues and problems than themselves. So, that led to more acceptance, self-acceptance, and that also enhanced their self-esteem and so on. So, this simple experiment actually shows that little small kind action could lead to many psychological benefits. So, this acts of kindness has many positive effects in terms of some other research finding also, that it increases happiness and well-being. It decreases symptoms of depression, anxiety and increases positive emotions. It also increases social well-being and quality of relationship and so on. These are all empirical findings from the research. Now, let us look into some of the possible mechanism why kind action or kindness makes people happy. So, what is this possible relationship between kindness and happiness, which research have consistently shown that a kind action actually enhances happiness. Now, what could be the possible mechanisms behind it? So, let us look into some possible mechanism. Leibomis in 2008 proposed some possible mechanism based on her research in the kind actions and kindness. So, one possible mechanism is that kindness leads to perceive others more positively and more charitably. So, when you perform some kind action, one reason is that you start perceiving others positively and more charitably, because without looking at others positively you cannot do kind actions. Why do you help someone? Because you have some positive perceptions about other people. If you hate someone, you are not likely to be kind to that person. So, the more you engage in kind action, one reason is that your perception about other people becomes positive. So, that is why you in the first place engage in that action. So, that when you perceive others positively, this is more likely to have positive benefit on your mind. You are more likely to have positive impact because of positive perceptions of other people. Second is kindness changes self perception also. It not only changes perception of others, it also changes one's own perception about oneself. Many times we evaluate ourselves by looking at what we do. We make a image of ourselves based on whatever actions we do. Many times when you do something bad, you feel bad about yourself. So, that means from whatever action we do, we make a self perception about ourselves like that. So, when you engage in kind actions or actions of which related to kindness of other people, one thing that your own perception about yourself becomes positive. You feel you start accepting yourself more, and you also experience more positive emotions about yourself. So, self acceptance increases, positive self esteem also increases. So, these acts of kindness may help people to view themselves as a more compassionate, altruistic person. So, you perceive yourself more positively and you perceive yourself as an altruistic person, compassionate person. So, that perception impacts one emotion and so on. So, this is how it can lead to positive impact. The third possible mechanism is that acts of kindness to others may actually distract people from their own troubles and ruminations. When you become kind towards others, one thing that happens that you forget about your own problems and so on, because you are focusing on someone else's situation. So, then this because of this own trouble and rumination and thought processes about what is my problem and so on, it enhances all the anxiety and depression and so on. When you get distracted to someone else, the possible impact of such rumination will be much less. The fourth possible mechanism is that acts of kindness for a worthy cause may give you a sense of your abilities, resources and expertise and feeling of control over your own life. So, many times when you do some acts of kindness and in terms of helping others and so on, many times you realize you have so many abilities that you can do that also. You can do many worthy actions and so on. You can find out that you have many resources, expertise, feelings, many times this all hidden potential may come out. That also can be a new realization. Fifth possible benefit is that through acts of kindness, one may learn new skills and discover hidden talents, which is connected to what we discussed about the last point. Sixth possible benefit or mechanism is that acts of kindness may promote sense of meaningfulness and value in one's life. So, we also discussed in the last module about meaning in life, and it is very clear when you do some worthy actions, positive actions like kind actions, your sense of meaning in life, worthiness of your life, value of your life actually increases in your own eyes. So, that promotes meaning in life. The seventh possible mechanism is kindness can lead to cascade of positive social consequences, such as others liking you, showing gratitude or reciprocating favors and so on. One positive action can trigger many positive consequences in one's life. So, you help one person, so he may have a positive attitude towards you. He may also return favors when you are in possible situation where you need help and so on. So, one action can trigger so many positive actions which may have a long term consequences, positive consequences. Another last possible mechanism is that kindness satisfies basic human need for connecting with others and satisfying need for relatedness. There is an inherent need within all human beings that we want to connect with other people. That need is called need for relatedness, and when we engage in kind actions, we are connecting with other people in a very positive sense. So, that need is also satisfied, which also give you satisfaction in one's life and so on. So, these are some of the possible mechanisms which can explain why kind action actually leads to many positive psychological consequences. Now, let us look into something called as a random acts of kindness. This is a concept that also is becoming more popular in terms of practicing, in terms of propagating by many organizations and so on. So, when we talk about random acts of kindness, we are talking about these are like small spontaneous selfless action done to help, uplift or support other people, often without expecting anything in return. These actions are called random because you may not have very specific plan to do that. You go around your life and whenever you see certain situation, you engage in those actions. So, these are random because they are often unplanned and in the spur of the moment you see the need and you do something. They can be done for strangers or acquaintances, not just close friends or family. It can be done for any people. The kindness is offered generally freely, not as a response to favor or exchange. You do not do it to get something out of it, you just do it as an act of kindness. So, these are called random acts of kindness and many people do it in their day to day life situations. Whenever they see some situation, if they are capable of helping people, animal, whatever it is, they do their best. So, all such actions can be called as random acts of kindness. So, these are like selfless actions performed by a person wishing to either help or positively affect the emotional state of another person. So, in lot of this action we just do something so that the mood of the person or the emotion of the person becomes positive. When you see somebody suffering, you want to help that person emotionally also or by actually doing something also. So, all these things could be called as random acts of kindness when you do not plan it much and you as per the situation may trigger such help and so on. So, examples of random acts of kindness could be, it is a very simple thing, you are just holding the door open for someone, paying for a stranger's coffee or meal, complimenting someone genuinely, leaving or encouraging note in a public place, giving up your seat or for someone else who needs it more and so on, helping someone carry heavy bags, planting trees, picking up litters and so on. Any such actions, where there is an intention to benefit some individuals, maybe in general it may be helpful for people in society and so on. All these could be an examples of random acts of kindness, or even smile or saying thank you could also be considered as an random acts of kindness, provided that intention is there. Now, a lot of people also propose that one can do random acts of kindness with a little bit planning and so on, in a sense that you can do different things in the different days of the week and so on. People also propose that it can be done in a more planned way, in a sense that when you see the benefit of it, it could be like one can have some plan beforehand in terms of each day one can plan something which are part of your daily activities where you can integrate some actions and so on. So, these are like some of the propositions that are generally discussed in terms of actual interventions and so on. So, one can do, for example, in one day complimenting one thing which you like about 3 people you meet. So, these are like everyday situation that one will encounter and you just add some acts of kindness just to add that. So, that is the plan. So, that is where one can plan it also in a sense. So, one day one can just decide to do this, that compliment one thing which you like about 3 people you meet on that day. Another day one can think about doing something like write a handwritten card to a boss or a colleague to thank them for whatever something which they have done and you have not expressed your gratitude towards them. So, you may decide one day I will do that. Another day one can say good morning to each person you meet in the lift, at work or reception staff and so on, like that. These are like every day we do whatever we do, you just add something. Another day one can pick up some litter and put it in the bin on your way to work. You can be more mindful about cleanliness and so on. Another day one can use people's names when talking to the staff in the canteen, cafe, house and so on. So, that they become more personalized interaction and so on. Another day one can place an uplifting note in library books or in a second hand book you are donating to a charity book shop and so on. Another day one can take flowers to a parent or a friend and so on, like that. So, these are like some of the examples that one can include random acts of kindness in whatever we do in our day to day activities and so on. You can just give a little twist and it can become an random acts of kindness. So, this is how it can be like applied in our life, in day to day life and so on. You do not have to do something great to be that, and each such small moments have many positive impact on your mind, and this may all collectively have a lot of positive influence on you when you do it more frequently and so on. Some organizations also celebrate something called as a Random Acts of Kindness Day. For example, it's an annual celebration, like so many days are celebrated. So, people also celebrate Random Acts of Kindness Day in that particular, just to increase awareness about it and the benefits of it and so on. So, this is an annual celebration dedicated to encourage people to perform spontaneous selfless good deeds to others. The goal is to spread positivity, compassion and connection in everyday life. Generally, it is celebrated February 17th in the US and some countries. Some other regions observe it on a different dates. This was actually promoted by an organization called Random Acts of Kindness Foundation. It is a non-profit organization that promotes kindness as a way to improve communities. So, this is an organization, it is more like a non-profit NGO type organization that promotes this aspect, because this is something very important for the global well-being and so on. This sense of kindness is so important, because that will help us promote well-being collectively in the society and the global level and so on. So, they celebrate a particular day and promote all this awareness and so on. Now, people also talk about, when we talk about kindness, we mostly talk about kind to others and so on, but kindness also has an important implication for oneself also, because many times it flows out of you. If you are not kind to yourself, probably it will not happen to other, you may not be able to express it genuinely to other people. One has to be kind to oneself also, then it will overflow to others and so on. So, that is something called as a self kindness or self compassion, sometimes people use, which basically means it is the practice of treating yourself with some warmth, care and understanding that you would offer to a good friend when facing difficulty, failure and inadequacy. How would you offer help or goodwill to another person when they are in difficulty? You just have the same approach towards yourself when you face problems and difficulties. So, that is the idea of self kindness. You are also the same individual, no? You are also similar person. So, if you can be kind to others in difficulties and problems, why not you also become kind towards yourself and look at yourself and the problem, so that you understand yourself and do not become unnecessarily judgmental about yourself and exaggerate the anxiety and so on. So, it is one of the core component of emotional well-being and resilience. In the Western countries, they talk a lot about this concept, which may sometimes look at more like egoistic thing, but it has many positive benefits. So, according to Dr. Christine Neff, self compassion has three key elements. One is self kindness, so being gentle and understanding with oneself instead of harshly critical. So, sometimes we become over critical about ourselves, which increases so much of tension and anxiety that you are never satisfied with what you do and so on, which is okay in terms of doing something properly and so on, but then overdoing of this can lead to have many negative emotional consequences. So, the idea of self kindness is that you become more little gentle and understanding about yourself, that you cannot be perfect in everything. So, rather than becoming too critical about yourself, you also have some understanding, be kind towards yourself. For example, you can say it is okay to make mistakes. I am also human, sometimes it happens. If you just did some mistakes and you just pondering on it again and again, it will not lead you anything productive. So, some kind of self kindness may be helpful in that context. Another component of self kindness is called common humanity, which basically means recognizes that suffering and imperfections are part of shared human experience. So, mistakes, problems, imperfections are not just about yourself, everybody has the same quality. So, there is a common humanity aspects to it. You do not have to separate yourself and be too critical about yourself, everybody are like that. So, that means everyone struggles, I am not the alone. Okay? So, you see the commonality with other people. So, then you will able to more likely to accept yourself, that you are not just separate individual facing some very typical situation, everybody faces similar situations. The third component is called mindfulness, which basically means holding one's thought and feeling in balanced awareness rather than ignoring them or exaggerating them. So, basically you become more aware, more mindful about the feelings and thoughts that you have about yourself and others. rather than becoming unconscious about it. So, if the more you become aware about them, so mindfulness we have talked in detail in some other earlier modules. So, it is about becoming more aware about your own thoughts and emotions, and slowly you look at them without any judgment. So, you accept it. So, for example, I am noticing my pain without judgment. So, pain can happen, suffering can happen, but you become aware of them, do not judge them, do not start fighting with it, just observe it, that is a phenomena that is happening, it is okay, just without judgment you observe it. So, that is called mindfulness aspects that help you to accept yourself and be kind towards yourself. So, that judgmental aspects of mind will be lessened by mindfulness and so on. So, these are the three important aspects to self compassion. If you increase them, self kindness, common humanity, look at it, and mindfulness, then it will enhance your self compassion and self kindness, and will have many positive emotional consequences. So, a lot of research shows that self compassion or kindness actually has many positive impact, including higher well being. So, it promotes psychological well being, it reduces depression, anxiety, stress, it builds resilience and motivation, encourages healthy behavior change and so on. You are more likely to engage in healthy behaviors and productive behaviors and so on. So, these are some of the things about the concept of kindness, self kindness, and benefits and mechanisms. So, these are we will talk about some other aspects of altruism and helping behavior in the upcoming lectures of this module. With this I stop here. Thank you.